here. We're at Douglas College and we're just saying a big welcome to you and a happy Thanksgiving to each and every one of you. We'll just begin as we usually do with just a bit of our introduction and then we'll pass it over to Len. So hopefully you're in the right session. This is about families and collaborating with families. And the implication is that collaborating with families is really good for recovery. And I guess it's good for people. That's what we're trying to say, to support people's recovery. I think you know the team well. You've seen us many times, I'm sure. If this is your first time on our platform, we welcome you. Of course, we are a learning community, so the more people that we have, the better able we are to share our knowledge and expertise. So you'll know that Dr. John Hickenbottom, this work is really his brainchild. He started that off with the Ministry of Health about, I guess, 4 years ago now. And so Manny, Jen, and I and Jordan became involved in keeping this good work going. So we're very grateful to the Ministry of Health and also to Douglas College, to Fraser Health Authority, and to our multiple people who've participated in this platform. So you'll know that it's originally funded by the Ministry of Health, and really our aim is to provide leadership, education, and guidance to the mental health field to develop and put effective evidence-based psychosocial rehabilitation practices into place. And as I mentioned, much gratitude to our webinar instructors for their support and expertise. We're very grateful to them. And you'll notice that we have about 54 archived sessions. So these are free workshops that are hopefully useful for you. So maybe as a team, you want to spend some time and look at some of those archive sessions. So hopefully they're easily accessible to you as a learning guide. And so really, it's really our aim is just to provide support for you in the community, maybe as somebody with lived experience, a loved one, somebody delivering services. And should you be interested in doing a webinar for us, please just do let us know. We love to hear it. And just to acknowledge as well that as Douglas College staff, we wish to acknowledge the Coquitlam and Pequot First Nations, as well as all Coast Salish peoples on whose traditional and unceded territory we live, learn, work, and play. So acknowledgement for that. After the webinar, you will receive an evaluation email, so please let us know. I know that we're busy, but we love to hear feedback from you, so we appreciate your time for filling that out. So please let us know, give us some feedback. It is my great pleasure to share with you this upcoming conference. We're very excited about this. So on October 29th and 30th, we're going to have two amazing speakers with us. So you know that we're all about promoting evidence-based and evidence-informed practices. So the first person that we'll hear from on the 29th is Tom Hay. And maybe many of you know him as an occupational therapist, but he's also an extremely skilled practitioner in mindfulness, has gone and done a great deal of training in the US. And so he's going to come for a full day and give us an overview of mindfulness, really from a personal perspective. So really, it's not to help people deliver this as a practice. It's more to get a sense of the benefit of mindfulness. He's also going to do a little bit of an overview of what the literature is saying and how mindfulness can contribute to people's health and wellness and ultimately recovery. So we are just so grateful to have Tom with us. It is a rare treat to have him provide that kind of support and education for us. So we look forward to an amazing day with Tom, both from the academic perspective, learning about the values and the benefits and the research. Also, we'll do an experiential part where he'll run us through a number of different exercises for the day. And hopefully you'll go home with a renewed sense of well-being for the day and be able to practice some techniques for yourself at home. And then on the 30th, we have Dr. Christopher Bowie, who comes from Queen's University, and his focus is really about cognitive remediation. There may be many people on the line who have contributed to amazing work here in British Columbia to advance opportunities for cognitive remediation within healthcare here in British Columbia for people who are living with mental health issues. Dr. Susan Inman and multiple people really worked to bring this focus to British Columbia with an initial conference October of last year. So very well attended. We did have Chris Bowie, and I believe that on our PSR Canada website, you'll be able to have a look at some of the video footage from that day. But Dr. Bowie has agreed to come back and be with us for a day, so you'll expect a high caliber of information around cognitive remediation and how it's been used in clinical practice. So Dr. Bowie is one of our Canadian leaders in this work, so we're very pleased to have him as well. So hopefully we'll see you there on October 29th and 30th. And hopefully with these two best practices and emergent practices, that there's something in one or both of these days for you as somebody receiving service, a family member, or somebody delivering service. We hope that it meets some of your learning needs. So let us know. Sign up as soon as you can, please. Also, as always, our colleagues over on the island, they had an upcoming conference on weed connection and relapse prevention in schizophrenia. So again, Friday, October 26th. So a lot of things happening in October, but that promises to be an amazing one-day symposium that has a number of different people, both from as healthcare delivery people and as people receiving services. So again, the link is there, and I'll just leave that for a second in case you want to just write that down. But please do sign up as soon as you can for that as well. So shout out to our colleagues for doing some amazing work. And with that in mind, it's over to Len Polak, who's here patiently sitting beside me. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview of who Len is. So for 25 years now, Len has worked both at the Fraser Health Service streams of mental health and substance use service. And over his time, Len has held a number of different roles, including EPI group and family therapist, rehabilitation and recovery coordinator, youth, family and adult addiction counselor, and most recently as the coordinator of the Fraser Health Mental Health Substance Use Family Support Services System. I'm so proud of myself that I can figure out all those letters. Aren't you proud of me? Yes. Len has held the development of 2 policies at Fraser Health, Mental Health and Substance Use, sharing of information policy, which I think is just cutting edge work for Fraser Health. So shout out to you guys for doing that work. And accompanying
clinical practice guidelines.
Thank you, clinical practice guidelines. Yes, stumbled over that one. As well as the draft family inclusion and support policy. Len says that what fueled the creation of these 2 policies is the undeniable evidence that families are a rich resource to their loved ones' recovery, and their presence and support is needed to be affirmed, celebrated, and supported. So hopefully that is music to many people's ears, and it's certainly a value that we hold here at SR Advanced Practice. So bear with me just for a moment while I wrestle with this. Oh dear, I did something bad there. I know I did. There we go. Let's put that in there. And here we go for.
I'm just going to jump in real quick and just say, for those of you who are on, and if you haven't figured out, there's a button at the bottom for a chat. So if you have anything to say, just hit the chat button and you can type some questions or comments or anything for us. And also, if you are having trouble with sound, some people are having some trouble. I think you'll have to kind of look at your settings on your computer to look at the volume and see if you can control the volume on your own computer. It seems to be working from our end, so I would just encourage you to play around with your settings on your computer. And sorry about that. Hopefully we can figure it out. Okay, thanks.
Thank you so much, Jen. As always, I really appreciate that help. So I'm going to introduce you to Len.
Okay.
Okay, and with that in mind, we'll just start that slideshow. So you're good. There you go.
Great.
Alrighty, happiness. All right, and I'm just going to move over to monitor the chat.
All right. Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad to actually join with you and present on collaborating with families is good for recovery. As noted in my bio, I work for Fraser Health Authority in the mental health and substance use stream. And our program is actually under the umbrella of the Rehab and Recovery Services program. And some of you may have met some of my colleagues who also are part of that program, that portfolio, Anthony Neptune and Angela Louie. And I think that Rehab and Recovery Services is the right place for my program to be at, as collaborating with the families, seeking to include them in treatment planning, and just involving them in any way possible with working with your client, are really reflective of the number of different principles of psychosocial rehab. So I'm hoping that today, as you look at the learning objectives, oh, excuse me, just for a second, Regina,
Yes.
I have here on the side, but it cuts into the PowerPoint a little bit.
Well, let's see what we
So
can
I
do
don't
about
know
that.
if everybody else is seeing that or
No,
not.
they don't.
Oh,
But I can
okay.
just take that away so you
Sure.
go.
Perfect. Thank you. So today what we're hoping to do is gain a deeper understanding of what family is, what the family journey, and identify what some of their needs are along the way, and also discover ways to engage with the families and how they can support their loved one. I'm hoping that this will also be a bit interactive, and so I'll have a couple of little things that we can do and share as we go through. And so I'm encouraging people to type in or speak. I'm not quite sure how, I guess it's two streams that we have conversation that we can have here, right? So typing it in, your questions or your comments, as well as speaking them forward. So without any further ado, let's dive in. Oops. Oh.
There we go.
I gotta keep it right down there. Okay, thank you. So why include families? Kirby Report 2004 clearly indicates that Canadian families were being excluded by the mental health system. So it was starting to appear on the landscape. It was only though a very short comments being made at those times in some of these reports, maybe a sentence or two, was really acknowledging families. Then we moved forward a little bit more. The Mental Health Commission of Canada in 2009 highlighted in their National Mental Health Strategy document the need to recognize and support the role families play in caregiving and promoting well-being. Well, more and more families were now starting to come forward. Their voice was being invited in, and by also decision makers. And so, you know, when you give somebody a platform like that, it's wonderful because it really gave them the opportunity to really share how meaningful it was to them when they got the support and when they were also being able to support their loved one. I've got my notes here as well too, so I'll refer a little bit to them as well too. So again, you know, why do we include families? Well, mental health staff have reported that families are supports, physical, emotional, social. Who doesn't like a good hug, you know, when they're not feeling so well, you know? But socially as well too, you know, going out and doing things, staying connected, you know, with the larger community. They're the first to notice when things aren't going well. They also help with finances, and they help with reminders around taking medication, attending appointments. They help decrease psychiatric symptoms and decrease hospital admissions. And where that is very much where when they start to learn a little bit more about what the diagnosis is, and they also learn of how their loved one, like, you know, the techniques that their loved one is using to manage their mental health illness, that and when they get to share that with their family members can be nice prompters, nice reminders, people who can remind them to, well, have you tried this? Remember you said that this might work. And sometimes just even that, suggesting that, even, you know, alleviate some of the stress for their loved one. And sometimes their loved one doesn't have to go to the hospital, or the family doesn't think, oh, that's our only route, is that we better take you back to the hospital.
So then we just got a little feedback just about the audio. So
Okay.
if there's any way we can, I
Closer?
think our papers might be just a little bit
Too noisy?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's probably awkward for you to hold it in that hand, but let's see. Yeah, let's see if that's happier.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Also, too, is as staff are saying, they're a good source of collateral information. They're historians, so they have a lot to be able to share with us. You know, when did things change for their loved one? You know, were there significant events? And get to share that They also improve the global understanding or the view of the client. Also, families help us to see the person's impact on their social network, sense of community. They also help us to better see the client as an individual and see their strengths. And families also help to reduce the stigma and people's anxiety through education for both their loved one and the family. And it also reduces conflict in the family. When family have education, information, because a lot of family members will maybe not be sure what to ask, or will be asking questions, and getting those answers can really calm the family a lot. It also just decreases crises in general. So, and also often clients want family involvement. They actually ask for that. And they like it when their experiences, when their growth, when their recovery is actually being noticed, especially by their families. So family get to validate that with the service providers. Also, our system relies on families. 2% of Canada's population live with and are cared for, uh, are caring for an adult with mental illness. That's about 740,000 people in Canada. 91% describe the arrangement as long-term, and half of those with mental illness in Canada live with family caregivers. Many families who don't live under the same roof provide daily and ongoing support to the relatives. Then family members become the crisis worker, the home care nurse, counselor, advocate, financial provider. They're on call 24/7 and they don't take statutory holidays off. So who is determined family? Oops. More and more, in some pockets of our world, yeah, the celebration of uniqueness of individuals is happening. We are all the same in some ways, somewhat the same in others, and very unique and different in other ways. But we are wired to be in relationship, whether that is with humans, with animals, with the earth. This is a term like around family that we have included in our sharing of information policy and clinical practice guideline. The term family natural support intends to signify a broader person-centered approach to service providers. It includes more than biological family members, anyone who has been identified by the individual, the representative or source, a service provider who provides support to the individual on a regular basis, or someone identified as being in a relationship of importance to the individual. And so that can be someone's best friend. It could possibly be a landlord, an aunt, or a niece. Just a quick little story here, which I think just kind of gets us to think a little bit even, further outside the box here. I live in Abbotsford, and about 4 years ago, there was a story and a picture in the local newspaper. And it was about a man who was homeless and had set up a makeshift little tent shelter behind the local Canadian Tire store. And it was a really bad weather night, and so he started a fire, but unfortunately the fire got away, and started mattress on fire and the shelter overall. And just by circumstance, the assistant manager of the store came out with fire extinguishers and put the fire out. But by that time, also some of the fire engines and news people actually happened also on the scene. And the picture in the paper is of a homeless man hugging the assistant manager, but it wasn't the homeless man that the person had rescued, but it was another fellow. And when asked why he was hugging the assistant manager, and this fellow was also another homeless person, and he said, because I wanted to thank him for saving my friend's life. So it really speaks to me, as as one never knows who has relationship with who. So family members are interconnected. Families are defined by genetics and or by choice. Family systems theory describes how the parts are connected to, impacted by, and influence other parts of the family system. Like a pebble dropped into a pond, all systems mobilize available resources to restore a sense of normal stability. good or bad, plus or minus, you know, families do make a significant difference. And so, and we know when something happens, it affects everyone connected to that person. Oh, no. Okay. Good. Okay, thanks. It's great having an assistant. So we are all family members, whether our family is natural or chosen, large or small, temporary or permanent, conventional or unconventional, resilient or fragile. Our experiences with family shape us. And so how do we know who is family or trusted supporters of our clients? So as you can see in front of you, I've got this little diagram. It's called the family relationship tree. And what I'd like you to do is take a couple of minutes and, well, you can maybe draw the tree. It can be a stick tree. Sticks come from the trees, but anyways, use your artistic ability, or you may just want to take a piece of paper or draw a line down the middle. And on the left side, write down who you consider is, say, your family. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to fill that in. So on the left side, who do you consider is family to you? So what I'd like you to do now is on the right side of the tree, the other tree there, is write down who you would want to be there for you in a time of crisis. Take a few minutes to do that. Okay, so just say for the sake of time on that, let's just talk a little bit about that. Do you see any similarities there? And again, I guess we're plugged in so people can speak and or type. So whichever you choose, if you want to, share some thoughts, that would be great. But looking for the similarities, are there any? Are there any differences? Did you consider putting a pet in one or both of the trees? Why, or maybe why not? Are there family on the left whom you wouldn't want supporting you? I'm going to show you mine. There's mine. So on the left is my wife, and then my mom. I have a sister. I just kind of put them in a little bit, well, try to put them in order of, I don't know, age or whatever. And, Joan's my oldest sister. Then there's Stixie, Brian, my bro, Matt, my foster son, Troy, my nephew, Misha, my niece. So those are kind of like in my inner circle of my family. But then when I look at, well, I was in a time of crisis, but still, it's my wife. She would give me some support, certain support, but like we know, not everybody, there's not one person, I'm sure, can meet all of our needs. And so, that's why there's more on the page here for me. So still would move my mom over there, my sister Dixie. Then I've got my friends, Gilles, Matt, foster son, Karen, friend, and Matthew, a friend as well too. So see, I've excluded some people out. I do have relationships with all of them, but that sense of maybe sharing something very personal or very emotional for me, these are the people that I would really feel would be there for me and would understand a lot more than the others, and would just support me, in ways that the other ones just I think are maybe, for lack of a better word, lacking in. But would having a template, say in the shape of a tree, be a barrier or a help to the way that you and your client maybe can talk about family and their relation and their supports? Or you can also draw a circle, put their client in the center of that circle, and then draw outside that circle, maybe in proximity to the circle, who are also their supports around that, and then also talk a little bit about how are they of a support to you? What do they do for you? Like say, for example, going back to mine, although, my wife would be there, to, hug me and, look after things in the house and try to calm things. But I also know that she would have a whole lot of questions. And time of crisis for me, that I don't think I'm in a position to really maybe want to share that, or it would just stress me out not having all the answers. Or maybe then I would also know that, when I wanted to share with some of my friends, I know that maybe they wouldn't go into that realm of maybe questions, lots of questions. It might be, let's go do something else, almost helping me to get my mind off the situation as well too. So it's just food for thought. Um, Also too, it depends on, our, again, our connections to our relations. Of course, we bring in also the spiritual part of it as well too. But also some people will pray, but also some people will still have that connection with the deceased family as well too, and that gives them comfort as well too. So you just never know. And I think that's the thing that it really leaves me with, and I hope it has you thinking as well too, is we must never assume that just because someone says that a person is a family member, or our client identifies someone as a family member, that they have a trusting relationship with the client. We really need to listen to and seek or understanding from our client as to on who family is to them and what they actually do for them. So we've explored a bit about who is family and what is family. Let's turn our attention to the experience of family. So I'm going to have 4 questions here for you. We'll just take a couple of minutes and have you just kind of go through them. But the first question is, imagine that you were confronted with the mental illness or substance use issue of a close friend, relative, or partner. What do you think your strongest feelings would be? Just take a couple of minutes, maybe write that down on a piece of paper, or type that in. It'd be great if you could type that in and share that with us, because we'll just kind of debrief this at the end of this exercise. I don't hear, someone's talking, but I don't hear.
So it's okay. I will just convey some of these ideas. Might be more expedient that way, but we hear about fear, powerlessness, wanting to take the problem away but not knowing how, compassion, sadness, mixed feelings, your professional inclinations bumping into your personal feeling.
Mm-hmm.
How to find a doctor. Nice practical, yeah, thought as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But the feelings, I really appreciate hearing the feelings. You know, it hits us. Experiences like that will hit us, and we will have an emotional reaction from that. And it is interesting. Somebody pointed out, you know, again, you know, we're professionals, and we know so much, and that so now we are also carrying a whole lot more information with us as well too around that. And you know, could also be fear of, well, if maybe we've worked in a unhealthy part of the system, you know, we might have fear, well, hope that, you know, my loved one doesn't go there, you know, kind of thing. uh, you know, or we know of a really good service, oh, I sure hope that, you know, and then all of a sudden be hopeful that maybe they will get that other service instead, you know. But yeah, it is a different kind of dilemma, I think, for us when professionally we also know this stuff as well too.
And we also have an interesting point too that this person says, as a peer, I would feel identification with me or my client.
Oh, yeah. Very good. Nice comment. So, second question. Whoops. Oh, I got to go back. There. Okay. What challenges, fears, or responsibilities would you likely have to face? Let's take a couple minutes to reflect on that.
People are saying empathy versus sympathy. Another person adds, oftentimes it might be that your family member doesn't want the help, and so it would be hard to get them the help.
Mm-hmm. That's a challenge.
Or to navigate the system and work out where the help is. Another person adds, try to find the right resources.
Mm-hmm.
And one person says, mental health system is really too difficult to navigate. Another person adds stigma.
Mm-hmm. I'm taking that people can hear you so that I'm not repeating it.
Yep,
Okay,
I think
good.
so.
Good,
Yep.
good stuff.
They'll let us know.
Yeah, great. Okay, then I'm going to go to the third question. What would be your most important concerns for the future?
If I can just add to the last question as well, one person adds a fear of a loved one going through this, but knowing you have to react as a professional and help them to find the resources they need. But first and foremost, being assured of their safety.
We'll carry a lot in that moment.
I think this is about question 3. Being emotionally involved can cause us to enable when enable is doing more harm than actual good. Another person says long-term support. Will things get better? Question mark.
Mm-hmm.
Person could fall through the cracks and spiral into dereliction. Mm-hmm. Ongoing wellness and support.
Okay. So then let's go on to question 4, the last question. What would be your most immediate needs? You.
So one person says safety, harm reduction, just with any other client or patient resident. Mm-hmm. Asking the individual, what do they need right now, and empower themselves so they can move forward. Mm-hmm. Counseling, somebody to talk to, knowledge about their needs at this stage, listening to the person's struggle. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I'm just going to then move us to the recap. In a sense, I think we've done a really great recap there, you know. And initially, when this happens to family, what has just been shared here online here is pretty much what's walking in the door time and time and time again with the family members. That sense of maybe being overwhelmed, that sense of fear, a sense of maybe hopelessness, and you know, and that can also be for people who also work in the system and who know a whole lot about the mental health. I mean, there is still that something to be said about, I mean, I know we give our all to our jobs and that in our roles, and we take it seriously, and we connect with people that we work with. But there's also a little bit different when it's also a loved one that is going through an experience as well too, and we get the same emotions as you know, those families that are coming through the doors, whether it's an ER, whether it's at the community mental health center or not. They have all the same fears. They have the concerns. You know, a lot of times, you know, you might have one person, one family member, and it's usually is maybe you know, uh, say if it's a, you know, husband wife you know, relationship, um, it's usually the female that is the one who comes in and maybe speaks on behalf of the family. Or when I say on behalf of the family, we don't normally think about that, that what's coming in that door, or when what's behind that question that that person is asking, because that person is usually seeking the, you know, out information, is carrying all the questions for the rest of the family. What she's got, in a sense, behind her, or anybody speaking, you know, coming in and asking questions, or supporting somebody, you know, accompanying them, you know, to different services, might be for the very first time or whatever. They're going to have a number of very invisible people, in a sense, standing with them that we don't see, but they're carrying their concerns as well too. So it's really quite, it's not just individual fears, it can be, you know, many more, multitude of fears and concerns. And also too, for that person, it depends on the depth of the relationship, or what that relationship is about. You know, will they be able to work again? You know, what about the finances? You know, how do I say this now to the family? You know, how are we going to be treated? Will they lose their job? You know, all those sorts of things can be coming in the door. So at the outset of a relative's, loved one's mental illness, family members are faced with unexpected role changes, feelings of helplessness, anger, despair, and anxiety. Family members also experience stigma and shame and confusion, and families bear financial burden. And I want to go back to that second point. You know, family members also experience stigma and shame. Where do you think they experience it the most? Anybody have an idea, a thought? My my trusty sidekick here tells me that technologically no. Well, she's back online here. This is good. Oh, it's flickering off and on. So you may have already shared, but as she works that out, I'll just tell you, the number one place where families experience the most stigma and shame is actually through the healthcare system. It is their interactions with the doctors, with nurses, with certain people, not everybody. And I want to be really clear about that. We have some very caring, compassionate healthcare workers. And unfortunately, there are some who don't watch what they say or don't think before they speak, or they carry some other ideas, um, uninformed ideas, and it comes out of their mouth. And the family is already feeling very vulnerable, and you know, already wondering how much their family is going to be judged. And then, you know, when they get messaging, you know, say from the healthcare system, you know, as well, you shouldn't do this, and well, I think you're doing too much of that. You know, they just it just adds to that feeling of shame and stigma. I just wanted to put that in there. going on with the experience of family. So family members may fear they are to blame. Emotional and physical demands of caregiving can lead to the burnout. Families may worry about the future, and families need to know they're not the only ones with similar problems, but stigma contributes to the isolation from the extended family and usual social support. And I want to go back to this a little bit more about, this, the blame and the stigma and the shame. Many of us, including myself, who work in mental health, have got either a loved one or, a very close friend or whatever, who is also, recovering with a mental illness. But when we go to accompany people to the hospital or to their services, and that, well, I don't identify myself as an employee of the healthcare, system in that. But but where I work, I know that if I wanted to talk about that, I could. But there are some who come to work in the very same services to provide those services, yet they will not share what their burden is because they've heard the unfortunate blaming messaging that has been around in their culture, the work culture that they're in, and that just shuts them down as well too. And we do really do contribute too, or we just have to watch, what is it, what what is the messaging that comes out of our mouths, and that it just reminds me of that. And this comes from we do learning exchanges in Fraser Health around this. And so when we do have, some staff come and talk, and we've also opened up the learning exchanges to other service providers as well too. And when they come and talk, that's one of the things that might be the very first time that they've actually shared this, that's their experience. And that, so you just tell, like, it's there, and it's a powerful thing, and a very demoralizing thing. So going on, the experience of the family. Families face difficult decisions about when to call for help, or police, mental health, when to take a loved one to the hospital, whether to house their relative, and the considerations for the impact on the other family members. And these decisions may impact their lifelong relationships. Families want and need to know how to reduce the chances of relapse and how to prevent crisis. So families really do need the guidance, support, and the validation. So let's look at this for the next couple of minutes. So what we can offer the families: providing education about the illness and the treatment plan, who does what's the family member's role, and we'll talk a little bit about that later on. Responding when families observe subtle changes in symptoms, consulting when family request input with making decisions, and helping to problem solve and discussing crisis plans, and also soliciting family input and feedback. Families know their relatives' interests, strengths, and habits a lot more than we do. We get that little sliver of a window of opportunity. Maybe it's a half hour or an hour, maybe out of a week or out of 2 weeks, or even maybe it's out of a month. But family, we're living day to day, and we see the changes, but we also see their strengths, and their habits. So they're a wealth of knowledge. What we can also offer the families: empathy, support, understanding, hope, and the expectation of success. When I say hope in something tangible, that their loved one still has potential, that things are possible. Like, for example, they can still get a job, have children, care for themselves. And the expectation of success, the families are in a sense yearning for, is show me changes, show me growth, show me the little green shoots, growing in the forest after the forest fire has gone through. And then also to acknowledge the feelings of loss and the fear and the frustration, to be listened to. As mentioned earlier, staff appreciate the information that they receive from families, and families see the signs that their loved one is becoming unwell way before we do. And they are also witness to the positive things going on as well. And I'd also like to just share with you the story, just a little brief story. a number of years ago, the Rehab and Recovery program invited Dr. Mark Ragans from Los Angeles to speak to staff and physicians and psychiatrists about recovery. And Dr. Ragans, he works with a large marginalized population of homeless folks in the Los Angeles area. And the folks are dealing with substance use and mental health issues and that, but he also, Dr. Ryan also invites in also the family members and their support. It was at the workshop, Dr. Reagan had asked the question, have you ever had a family member yell at you? And there were actually a couple of nods in the room. I appreciated people's transparency and honesty and that. And he acknowledged that he had been yelled at too. And he said, you know, as he reflected on this, what he's really come to realize is that family members will tend to yell when they don't believe what they have said has been heard. And the louder the voice is really matches their perception of how high the wall is that they see between us and them. And so Dr. Agans had said, he goes, you know what, our challenge is that we need to lower the wall. And I think that's what it really speaks to here.
Len, we had an ask to define success. I think it just refers to the slide about
the expectations of success. Yeah. And I think that's the wonderful thing is that, you know, you're having a conversation, like person is always is moving along in their recovery, but a lot of times people are, maybe if they're coming from the medical model, you know, where, well, we have to see, you know, all the symptoms gone before we can actually, you know, put the check mark in there that all of a sudden now this person is, you know, successfully recovered, so to speak. And we know that a lot of people have rewarding lives, are living rewarding lives. You know, they're still on medication, they're still managing their symptoms, but they're active, they're, you know, they're doing all sorts of things in society. But sometimes, you know, it can be the family, or maybe it's the service provider might have bought into that idea that, oh, it has to be an absence of all symptoms before we can actually see this as success. So I think what we can do, you know, right from the get-go is, you know, remind people of, again, those little green shoots. We tend to look at the devastation, but that person is still, maybe if we want to call it struggling, but this person is still coping. This person is still putting one and one together, and they're coming up with a plan, and they're trying to make the best of a, you know, of a situation that they have found themselves in. It is really, really good to be able to celebrate those things that we actually see that are happening. So that's what I would say is, you know, when we're looking at success, I hope that answered that question.
I think so. Also, the person just says, is it growth beyond the negative symptoms of the illness?
I think it would, I would say yes, because I don't think anybody wants to be defined by their mental illness or by the diagnosis. We are all so much more than that. I think when we get to the point of acknowledging and accepting, okay, this is what it is, and this is how I manage it, and I got to acknowledge that there are some days where it's better than other days and all that, but I press on. I think so. For example, I'll draw on, like in our program, in Rehab and Recovery, we have for years have always included family members and persons with lived experience to be part of all of our working groups, all of our committees. They are involved in our hiring panels as well too. We respect their input, their knowledge. And one of the things when we were working on the sharing of information policy, we had the Department of Ethics walk us through a process defining our values that we're going to, you know, kind of help shape, you know, the direction that the sharing of information policy was going to go in. And we have this one fellow, person with lived experience, and he has schizophrenia. And there are some days, he's actually on a couple of committees, and there are some days he's struggling, and he'll tell you, I'm having a bad day today. But he got on the SkyTrain, you know, come to the meeting because he said, I like what we're doing. You could tell it gave him meaning. It gives him, you know, things to, he knows his input is really valued. And when the director of ethics says on a number of occasions to him, calls him out and says, wow, that's a powerful insight. That needs to be, you know, factored in here. It, you know, it just again spoke to that to him, says, yeah, I'm glad that I got up out of bed. I was going to press on past, you know, through these, through the, how I'm feeling right now and keep on going. I've got something to offer. So I don't know if that answers that, but that's the example that comes to my mind. Okay, so then I will, let's transition to now collaborating with the family. So collaboration, a process of mutual sharing and working together to achieve common goals in such a way that all persons or groups are recognized and growth is enhanced. I mean, it's a nice statement, and that, well, let's look at what that actually means a little bit deeper. So to collaborate, this method, especially in our work, involves at least 3 experts. The mental health provider who knows the scientific literature, has clinical experience, the patient who knows his or her own preferences and subjective experiences, and the family who have their own knowledge and experiences who can play a valuable therapeutic role and who also needs support. So joining with the family. Oops, let me start off. Whoop, I jumped too soon. Starting off the conversation with your client. Again, these are just, you know, some ways to speak, but you would, you know, I would suggest you put it in your own words, but it just is to kind of maybe jog your thoughts around maybe how you might go about doing it, presenting it. So I'd like to know who in your life you get the most support from. So take the time to list them and what do these supports do for your client. So it's going back to whether it's a family tree or a genogram. You want to make it, I think, kind of fun a little bit and just, you know, just talking about, yeah, what do they do for you? What does mom do for you? Or, you know, what does your uncle do for you? How are they a support to you? And having those conversations, you know, there's so much richness in those conversations. Or what could so-and-so do for you right now to help you in your recovery? Again, or even a moment when a person has just been, you know, released from the hospital and that, and they're feeling so vulnerable and that, you know, and struggling. Wow, is there somebody who can help you right now in your recovery? Says again, you're not walking this path alone. You know, you can have somebody along with you that you trust. I'd like us to consider including your family support person as part of your treatment recovery team, or with the client's help, determine what they need from their support. What do you think so and so could do or needs that could support you more? Well, I know that when I worked in the EPI program and I meet, you know, clients in the hospital and that, and also with the family members as well too, who were of course devastated because maybe it was the first time their loved one was in the hospital, and you know they always felt like, you know, in the hospital that was the end. And I would always say to them, no, it's actually the beginning, because your loved one tried everything that they could to continue to hold on, you know, and manage. And now they realize, no, they need more support. So this is where it begins. And that's where then the support, can come in. And the second thing is when I would meet with the clients in the hospital and that, and I would, you know, after, you know, introduce myself and that and what our program is about, and that I would usually say to them is that I do consider family to be part of the treatment recovery team and that we're going to create here. But let's talk about what that might look like. And that's where we would, you know, again, take that deeper dive as to who's who in your life. Who do you want to include? Who do you want to, in a sense, keep out, so to speak? I never had a no. Nobody was ever interested in wanting to engage in that. I had people say, though, no, this person, I wouldn't want them in, but this person, yes. Then joining with the family. Tell the client you want to meet with their supports family. Keep in mind that the families need to know that they are being listened to. Tell the client you'd like to meet with them, with the client there as well. Can you schedule an appointment with the family so you can assess how much they know about recovery with a mental illness? And we'll get into that a little bit more here too. Take the lead and inform the family of the value of their support. Affirm them. Sometimes also family are, again, It's a natural feeling for family as well, especially if it's parents, you know, they've always looked after their child. Even if their child's an adult, it's still their child. And, you know, it's just a natural thing. You know, you do. It's a nurturing part. There's nothing wrong with it. It's all, you know, it is all good. But sometimes families are still searching for, but maybe I'm not doing enough, or I could have done more, or what else do they need? And sometimes they're thinking that there has to be something big that they should be doing. But actually, a lot of the things, we take the time to just have the conversations with them about what they are actually doing. Sometimes providing the roof over a person's head, putting the food on the table, you know, telling their loved one, don't worry about the bills, you know, or whatever that is, the pets are fed or whatever. That's a huge, huge relief for their loved one. So again, it's really good to be able to engage in those conversations, because I think the family really do appreciate then getting that feedback and knowing, wow, I am contributing actually something positive here. Because they're always searching, because they wish that their loved one, you know, didn't have this problem and would heal quickly in that. So it's a great relationship building exercise. Then So while taking the lead, remind the family that they all want to be of help, but too much help and too many ideas can be overwhelming. And what I mean by that, you know, is if they're just kind of bombarding their loved one with, well, you should do this and maybe you should do that, and well, how about we try this? And well, I heard Auntie did this, you know, and you know, your niece got this and they did this, and maybe you know we should do that. So that coming in a lot, it can be kind of overwhelming. And what I would say is to decrease that stress for our clients is that's where we are the listening ear for the family. Let them process that stuff with us, and we can help kind of filter that, because there might be some great ideas in there that we can, you know, take forward and that. But again, it helps them not, you know, just kind of burden their loved one with those ideas. Also, check with the family. Do they feel capable? And, you know, back to the point there is ask the family how they see themselves as being supportive. And also share with the family what the client needs from their supports. This is where I say check with the family. Do they feel capable? Do they need more support? We must also keep in mind that they may not want to be as much support as the system or their loved one expects of them. They have the right to say no. You know, they have the right to have limits as well too. And it's good that their loved one and the system hears that. But a lot of times the system doesn't really ask that question, especially when the loved one is being released from the hospital. It's pretty much, this is the plan and off you go. And a lot of times family members don't have any sense of maybe even if it's not the diagnosis, well, maybe what are the medications, or are there any side effects of the medication or anything like that? And so they're just left on their own, and now, well, we'll take care of this. And, you know, when you just think about it, you know, here we have it just, you know, say, for example, the inpatient unit, you know, staffed with all these professionals, you know, and walls, and to provide a sense of, you know, safety and that. And then within just a couple of days, all that in a sense is gone, and is all in a sense deferred now back, you know, over to the family. And so, you know, I think it's really important for us to, again, this whole part of including family is how capable are they? What other supports, if they got a little bit extra support, could they, you know, because all family want to be of help. They really do. It's just sometimes the system can assume that they're already equipped, and a lot of times maybe they're not. It's just food for thought. And then look to see where the good lies. How can this be brought about? And again, that's talking about the relationships. It's talking about what was going well even when they were still trying to manage the illness on their own, or have been managing it for a long time. Where has the support been? How does that happen back then? Or you look at a past experience where there was another illness. How did the family, or how did that person support, or people support this person? Can some of that stuff that happened back then be brought forward to now? And let's see. Okay, to the next one. While taking the lead, it is important to understand what the family's attitudes and beliefs are about mental illness. This is really, really significant. So we're going to get Regina to bring up this handout.
Okay, need a little second. See, hopefully.
Oh, I think we got it. There it is. Excellent.
We got it, yeah.
Great. And as I try to scroll down, or okay, great. Perfect. Thank you. So, you know, a lot of times, you know, family, not everybody in the family are going to have the same ideas about maybe what caused the, you know, the mental illness, or, you know, everybody's going to have their own relationship and their own history with that family member. And that, so sometimes having some conversations with the family, such as, you know, have you had any previous experience with other people and their experience with mental illness? If so, how does this compare with the current situation? So say, for example, maybe some people might have an idea of, well, we have Uncle so-and-so who ended up maybe at Riverview, and all I know is he was locked away for a very long time. And I'm thinking, I'm hoping that's not what my son has. And you know, where someone else will say, well, you know, I watched some of these movies there, you know, where maybe they portray, you know, people with mental illness, you know, in such negative ways. Geez, I hope, you know, he's not going to be like this. So you get a real sense of, you know, just from that one question, what are family, you know, thinking? Because what they're thinking from those, you know, the pictures in their head, they're going to impose them not only on their loved one, but they're also going to impose them on society. So if they think that, oh, you know, they might think that my loved one is, you know, going to be, you know, a psycho killer, you know, then that stops the family from ever sharing, you know, and stepping out and going to, you know, support groups and that, and sharing their situation, or sharing with their neighbors, or with their family about the situation that's going on. So it's a really great opportunity, a great question to open it up, so that then you can, it gives you the opportunity to talk more about, you know, this is what mental illness is, and, you know, how, you know, people are thriving, you know, many people thrive with dealing with the mental illness and things like that. Or what did you know about mental illness before your relative became unwell? And again, sometimes people will bring the past, way in the past, not realize we have a new generation of medications, you know, a whole lot more services than what were, you know, in place a generation ago. So it gives opportunity for that. So all of that really does kind of inspire more hope also in families too. And so then, you know, what opportunities have you had to find out about mental illness? You know, so I would just say, you know, if you can, I think, Regina, do you make this available in your handouts as when you send this out, or when people can access this? Or
we can send it, we definitely can put it on the website, psyrehab.ca website.
Okay.
And I guess we will ask for an evaluation, so we can probably send that out with the evaluation as well.
Oh, okay.
I'll just work with Jen around that.
Super, super. And so just the last one before we move on here is the one about the explanatory model. This is a question that I ask a lot. And so what do each of you think caused the mental health issue? And you've been given the doctor's view. Do you have a different idea about where the illness came from? And the reason why, well, there's two things here, is what do each of you think caused the mental health issue? If you do have family come together, or you're talking to them individually, you again might have different ideas. Someone might say it was, well, because of maybe the drugs that they did back then, or it was, well, you know what, we took a trip, we saw people in poverty, I saw a change in him or her. Like, you know, that will really give you a sense, again, what are the ideas that people are carrying with them. And so it gives a great opportunity for you to take a moment, if it's not you, that you can at least refer them to somebody who can give them the education around, you know, how does mental illness happen? And we can broaden their perspective, you know, as a family. And this part here is, you've been given the doctor's view. Do you have a different idea about where the illness came from? That's really important too, because again, some families might have an idea where it's just all about the power of positivity, you know, and if they believe that, then they're not going to believe in, say, the pharmacology. So if their loved one comes home with the medication, will they actually care? Maybe they might even discourage their loved one from taking the medication if they have, that, possibly that belief. So that belief or other beliefs, I'm just using that as an example. So I think it's a really good question to ask, because it will give you a sense of, are they in or are they not in? Will they be allies here, or will, in a sense, subtly, could they possibly be undermining, unconsciously undermining, some of the other ways, to help their loved one. So anyways, just leave that with you. I think it's got a lot of really good questions on it, and you pick and choose, whichever ones you'd like to use.
Cool. So we'll just go back to the slide deck. Second.
Okay. And yeah, just suggest, if you don't, can't do it all, give them all the education and all that sort of stuff, find a place to where the family members can get that information. And of course, tell them that each person's recovery journey is different, because again, a lot of family members will be comparing, and they might have heard of a very positive experience going on, and so that's what they're going to lock into. They can, because of course they want their loved one to be healing and recovering as quickly as possible. So that certainly can come in, again, reminding. And also they might see something, where a person is struggling, a little bit more in the recovery, or their steps to, are smaller steps, and then they might, be bringing that in as well too, and going, well, is this what my loved one is going to be like or experiencing in that? And that's where it's so important to be reminding them that each person's recovery journey is different. What may have worked for one person may not work for another. And also, you can talk about caregiving and versus support, but that can almost be another conversation in and of itself. But the long and the short of why that's in there is that sometimes family members can, unknowingly to them, stay in a caregiving role, where the caregiving is really given a lot more when a person has maybe just been, say, diagnosed with the illness, or has just been released from the hospital. They need more support in that. And but sometimes family doesn't know sometimes when to kind of start to gently, give back, to their loved one, to take, a little bit more of the support, responsibility for the recovery, even if it's like a degree at a time. Sometimes family just, they don't want their loved one to hurt again. And so they can just, unknowingly take a little bit more on, which maybe they don't have to. And that's the difference between caregiving versus support. Just know how to know how to transition through that. It's different for everybody, but it's just a nice thing to be mindful of. Because also, if a family is too much into the just caregiving, they all of a sudden they're not looking after themselves as well too. But when they start to look at, I can still be a support to my loved one. Let's look at their strengths and the things that they're already doing for themselves. Gives the family member a chance to do some deep breathing for themselves and take some deep breaths, and then be able to start to put a little bit more focus on themselves as well too. But that topic in and of itself can be a whole, hour conversation. So while taking the lead, help them understand your role, what your client sees as their role, and the responsibilities of everyone to your client working to attain their recovery goals. So if family members are to be included in the treatment planning of their loved one, they need to know the responsibility that comes with that, and so does your client. So for example, we do honor and respect and need to do that around a person's privacy and confidentiality. And so we do that, say, amongst professionals. We know that we all sign, the forms, for our employer, saying that we will do that. But then when we include somebody who's not part of the system, who in a sense hasn't signed those kinds of forms, and now they're hearing information, for the first time, it's really, really important to talk to them about the value of, well, checking with the client, but talking to the family member as well too, about, the need to honor, the information, and you know, that it's private, and to have these conversations with their loved one, you know, about if they're going to share information, well, what kind of information would they like to share? But not just to feel like now they should be able to just go out there and just share with anybody. But I think it's really, really important to have that conversation. But also it's really important too, is especially for clinicians when they're considering inviting family into the sessions, sometimes some can be overwhelmed with the thought of that, because they go, oh, you know, will the family kind of take over? Will they all of a sudden, will it be more a session for the family than it will be for you know, the client? And that's where part of the role is, where the clinician is or the health service provider is setting some parameters around that. So this is, let's say if I'm a case manager, and this is what I do when I'm inviting in, you know, my client supports, you know, this is what we talk about, you know, how you are going to be support to, you know, your loved one, your friend, or whatever. And so you can kind of put those parameters and saying, you know, what your role is, as in, you know, take that information in. You can call me, and that I'm the main person, the main contact. So yeah, it just kind of helps establish that a little bit with people. And same thing is getting a sense from you know, the client, you know, their role and their responsibility in their recovery as well too, because it's really good for them to be able to say to their family, because families sometimes will do this, again, unknowingly, but and out of concern, you know, and a little bit of fear, they might hover around a little bit, and that can leave the client feeling, their loved one feeling very uncomfortable in that. And so it's always nice to have the conversation to say, no, when your loved one goes into the bedroom, you know, and you don't see them for 4 hours, it's because they're just listening to music and they're just chilling out, you know, where instead of the worst, you know, assuming the worst and that. And so it's really good in those, having those conversations where the client can be saying, well, this is where I'm taking responsibility for myself. So family, you can just chill, you know. So it's a great opportunity to have those conversations, because again, when family is stressed like that, it's kind of, it feeds, right? They're stressed, or they're all worried and all that, their loved one's going to pick up on that vibration, and then that's going to stress them out. And then, you know, oh, now the family sees their loved one stressed, and you see how it just feeds that kind of thing. So I think sometimes having a conversation, even one session, can do wonders for you know, just kind of calming the waters there, so to speak. Build in a review, a feedback process, and be open to hearing what the family has to say or suggest. And just, you know, as we're close to ending, I just want to share a little brief story with you around this, you know, hearing what the family have to say or to suggest. A mental health case manager was working with a young man about 21 years old. And he was complaining to her about his parents, that, you know, he had just been released from the hospital, you know, about a couple months before, but he thought that they were expecting too much from him. You know, mentioning he had to get a job, pay rent, you know, cook some meals, you know, supper time, and that. And he told the case manager that that was just too much to ask of him. And so the case manager said, well, why don't we have your family come in and let's talk about this? And he was all up for it. He's like, oh yeah, like he had this idea that, yeah, my case manager is going to tell my family, you know, this is what you shouldn't be doing, et cetera, et cetera. So the family come in, and they did share that, you know, they did want him to pay rent. They did want him to make some meals. They saw him as capable. They said he's out very late, you know, coming home, you know, early morning, many nights. So they knew that he was quite capable of getting up and doing things and that, and being social and that. And then they also made them think that he should also have a job. So at the end of that first session, it all seemed pretty reasonable also to the case manager. And so, you know, the client felt a little bit under the pressure a little bit, as in, what's wrong with this? You know, what's wrong with the picture with regards to your parents' requests and that. So in a sense, he was a little upset, but they decided, you know, a couple of weeks' time, they'd come back together so they'd have a chance to reflect on this. And so they come back, and the young man had actually thought about that, and he thought, no, it was reasonable when it was all laid out there. You know, it wasn't that they were asking him, you know, to take on a whole lot, but that he could do it. He had a disability coming in. He could pay the $400 for the rent. Yes, he could make a couple meals a night because both of his parents were working all day, coming home at night. So it was of support. But one area, though, is that it was around work. His father didn't want him to work at all because he thought that would stress him out too much and he would end up back in the hospital. And the mom wanted him to go out and get a full-time job. And so as they talked about it, the young man said, I could maybe do part-time, maybe 1 or 2 days a week, but I could not work full-time. I know that that would just be too much. So they came to an agreement there as well, too, that once he started to feel a little bit better, that he would then work with the vocational counselor and they would look at something like a part-time job. The case manager was telling me after, she said, as I reflect back on this, she said, by me inviting the family into the session and just talking a little bit about that and getting some clarity there, and everybody kind of a little bit on the same page, said, I honestly believe that we probably pushed my client's recovery at least a year to a year and a half ahead than where it could have been. Because had we not talked about all his capabilities, he could have just been staying at home thinking about, in a sense, his disability. And so I think it's just a really, a poignant story, for about, be open to hearing what the family have to say or suggest. And so my last, so in summary, professionals and families working together, the best chance for recovery. Clients benefit from knowing their family understands their diagnosis and path to recovery. Clients experience relief knowing their families have support too. Included families know they don't shoulder the responsibility to be alone. Clinicians, including families, opens opportunity for more satisfying work. And I hear that from clinicians time and time again. When they have included family, they do feel like they have moved forward more. And they don't feel that they're all alone in this as well, too. So I know we only have 5 minutes left, so.
That's okay. That's all right. So I'm going to try and relay the questions. So hopefully people online will hear them as well. I think we probably can do this stop sharing so we have a little bit more. There we go. And that way you can see the questions as well then, so you can respond. But maybe there's quite a chunk there, as you're reading some of that, I can just say that we've had some great comments, Len, people asking and just acknowledging that this is really a great resource that I guess one person was saying that, I have realized some resources that are valuable and available, and just they acknowledge and thank you for that. Others noting that your illness does not define who you are, your courage does, which I think is really a neat place to move from. Mm-hmm. And one person, I guess we kind of had 3 outstanding things. The first of which is a discussion on the health of family members and a concern that families may feel overwhelmed and may need support. And so maybe I'll just outline all of these points together. But Susan, and maybe you can just follow here. So one of the most difficult decisions that families have to make is to pursue involuntary treatment when the client has relapsed into psychosis and have no awareness of how they've become ill. Can you clarify if PSR workers understand the role of involuntary treatment? And I guess that's from your experience at Fraser Health. And does education that PSR clinicians offer to clients and families include information about agnostina? And I never say that correctly, but
I know, so I know.
Yeah, I know. I always stumble over that. Yeah, so I guess that's.
It moved okay. It rolled down.
I know. It's tricky.
I know. That means we have lots of people sharing. Yeah. I love it.
So this is especially important. Susan says if the person is stabilized and they don't remember how ill they were when recent family were pursuing involuntary hospitalization.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and I can't speak on behalf, and it's a great question. If I go back, even our family support services program, we've been now in existence for 1 year as of October the 2nd. We also now have first the sharing of information policy, and we have the draft one now of the inclusion one. We've tried really hard to get the messaging out there. We have there's a lot of turnover in a big organization in that. So we know that we have to keep the education ongoing, kind of thing. So there are some people who will really embrace the inclusion of family and know the value of what that is like, you know, when family get education and information about, you know, lack of insight and all that sort of stuff. And there might be some clinicians who just don't have that awareness. So, you know, in the family support services program, we do talk about that with the families that we meet with. We do. I'm not sure, say in the PSR, other webinars that you've done, if it does talk more about the lack of insight and how you work with that. But also the recovery centered clinical system as well too, also highlights that as well too. But there are many, I mean, we have to keep this in the forefront of all of our clinicians' minds all the time, that families need to understand that. And yeah, just more education for family members.
So one person comments that they are that's part of their role, I guess. One person says that I think that some of us have some lack of awareness or just as part of that's present, and says great seminar, very informative. Then some person says some families may need respite sometimes from 24/7 caregiving. Are there any respite resources clinicians can recommend for families?
Yes, there is. In Fraser Health right now, and we don't have a lot of money, but we have some, and it is spread out over the whole region, and it is through the Family Support Services program, and we will meet with family. And although we have money available, a lot of times, a lot of respite plans, once we get talking about the family, and once we, you know, settle on the sense, you know, when we go and meet with families, we have in the forefront of our minds is, okay, the question is, have you been looking after yourself? Have you taken time for yourself? And as we get talking about that, and then we start looking about what kind of respite do you have in place for you, sometimes it doesn't require any funds, or maybe they do have some funds to put into respite for themselves. And then we talk about, well, what would that look like, you know, for the, and then once we, you know, that's now starts to come to the forefront of a person's mind. It's interesting how a respite plan can come together. And for some people, we do have the money there available it's up to $500 available. So they can apply through our program, and also through BCSS. BCSS and us, we're in this a collaborative relationship here, where they certainly are taking care of like the money part of it, you know, writing the checks for everybody in that, and still also through their family educators, family members through BCSS can also access the respite funds as well too. But I believe we are the only health authority that has respite funds available for family. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's my understanding.
So we have a comment here from a peer worker who says, my supervisor with us is thinking of operating to work with families of my clients as well. Brand new idea for us, and have any thoughts? Maybe we could leave your email available?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So maybe we'll type that in if you have a moment just down here, if that's okay with you.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, there you go. If you don't mind just typing
Sure.
it. Thanks for that comment, and we wish you well. One person says, thanks, very knowledgeable. One person says the video is jumping, and that's because we've been changing screens, Jane. So yeah. One person says, I totally agree with everything you mentioned. I know because I have a family who supports me. And I am someone with living experience. I have peer support worker for Manitoba Schizophrenia Society. Mental health nurse understands how important it is to have supportive family involvement in Manitoba. More work has to be accomplished. So that's really great news.
It is spreading. It is really spreading across Canada. You know, it just makes sense. I mean, we would do that with any other illnesses in the family, right? It's just almost, it's the thing is doctors and nurses will actually mention it, you know, is your mom coming, is your husband coming, whatever, you know, around those other illnesses. So why not with this as well too? So it is picking up speed.
About time, I think, in a lot of respects, right? Yeah, but good news, yes. one person says, thank you for a very clear, well-presented webinar, engaging presentation. Always nice to get that feedback.
Thank you.
Are there times when you meet with a family alone without the client? When do you make that decision? There is a need to meet alone with the family, and how do you relay or communicate that to the client?
That's a great question. That really talks about what underlies the whole the sharing of information policy, and that is it's about relationships. It's about communicating with our clients right up front to say, again, you know, you have this support around you. They might be feeling very alone, isolated, or whatever. You know, if they've got some information, you know, or, you know, if I talk with them and I can get a sense of what information they need, you know, then that's great. I can steer them in that direction. The other thing, though, is that sometimes some clients will say, you can't talk to my family. You don't have permission to talk to my family. Well, yes and no. Family members, I mean, the client can still say, you know, the right to privacy and all that sort of stuff. So we go down that path in the sharing of information policy, and we've got that all kind of, you know, articulated, all delineated out. However, but the client can't stop the family members from talking to the health service providers. And that policy is very clear to the health service providers. You can accept information from families. And what you also have to do is you also have to ask families if you want to, if that can be kept in confidence. Now, based on laws, can affect also that. But family members also have the right to have certain information that they share kept in private. So the client can't, in a sense, tell us, no, we can't have conversation with the family. Family can call us and give us any information that they feel is necessary. But I think the key thing here is, again, is as upfront as possible that you can be with the client is to say, I don't want that splitting. Okay, I would really want your family. I want you to include the family. I want us to work together. Yes, your file is not an open book to your family. Let's talk about, you know, where we see them coming in and what, in a sense, is really kind of private that they don't need any information about. And when we have that conversation about that, I think it's much, much easier right from the get-go. When they first come with us, come and visit with us, we start that conversation off there. Then there's no surprises in the middle or, you know, near the end or whatever. We were transparent. They knew that we were going to have conversation with, or we might have conversation with family. So if it happened, then they won't feel surprised or betrayed.
I like that clarity of that response. I think we've struggled with that in mental health care for a long time, haven't we? But I really appreciate that clarity. So we got lots of kudos and thank you. I'm conscious that it's 12 o'clock, so we also have maybe any chance you can go to Alberta. So it's always nice to when you get that kind of information. And finally, we've had a few questions just about the PSR conference. So please, can you just give a Google to PSR Canada? And I think dear Jen has put that information on that website. So please Google PSR Canada. And you will find the information about the conference. 2 days here in British Columbia, in Douglas College out here in New Westminster. Looks like a great lineup in terms of speakers around mindfulness and cognition. So sure love to have you. We have lots of spots at this point. We're just a little worried about our sign up. So we'd love to hear from you as soon as possible. And Jen, bless your heart for putting up that. I really appreciate a direct link to the information about the conference. So yeah, we're just, as I said, just a little bit worried about sign up at this point. So we'd love to hear from you as soon as possible and just make sure that we're able to proceed with the conference. So thank you. So thanks very much, Len and team, for a great session.
Thank you.
So great to see so many comments and questions and you know, asking for deeper understandings from the chat. And Len, I think you did a really super job. Never easy to do this on technology in a little office that you've never been before. But honestly, we've just really enjoyed some stellar glimpse into what Fraser Health Authority are doing. And I know that you've been the person heading up that project. So kudos to you and your team for doing this great work.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
And we'll wish you again a happy Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And yeah, thanks for allowing us to feast on family involvement in
Yeah.
recovery. Yeah.
What a great time,
Yeah.
eh, to be talking about family.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't put that together. I hear you. Yes. Thanks again. So we'll just leave the chat and we'll leave this platform open in case anybody wants to scroll back and take any of the links or any of the information. But I will turn off the mic and I'll wish you well. And you will hear from us in terms of evaluation. Please let us know. And we'd love to hear suggestions for future presentations. We have 2 coming up. You probably know that. So please pop into the psyrehab.ca website to learn about our 2 upcoming presentations. Bye for now.